You have to be standing over there. There are people doing
Well, hello this evening. I'm really grateful for you guys to come on Wednesday afternoon, coming here on such a day with a moon, like we have super bloody moon. So they started to come on 31st of January to attend this talk. It's really brilliant of you. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. You are welcome at the Aga Khan University. Our talk today is about the landscape of Arab publications, challenges and opportunities. It's part of our series, of the MCA series, which is going to be about knowledge production in Muslim context. It's a great pleasure to welcome our speakers and to welcome all of you and the people attending online. I'll give probably a couple of notes for health and safety. So we are not planning for any fire alarm. So in case that happens, please take it seriously. And exit is, we have one exit there and another exit next to the lift. Also, the washrooms are next to the lift, so if you need to use them. Now I'll hand it over to the director of the ISMC, Professor Leif Sternberg. So please come. Thank you.
So thank you, Mohammed, and thank you for organizing this. I've been given the task to introduce the speakers, and I'll be as quick as I possibly can, because I do think that you're not here to listen to me. On my left, we have Mr. André Gaspard, who is the award-winning founder of the Middle East specialist of Saki Bookshop and Publishing House in London and Beirut. He is a fiercely, or Saki Books is a fiercely independent forum for writers and artists from around the world, and it has made its mark as a publisher unafraid of taking risks. It's championing works by many different opinions, feminists, minority writers from the Middle East and beyond. A tireless champion of freedom of expression, Gaspard has dedicated much time to promoting international culture and literary excellence, encouraging dialogue between Arab societies and other societies. He has published critically acclaimed award-winning books, originally written in Arabic and other languages, always maintaining the highest standard, literary and intellectual, with a determination to ensure that serious issues and ideas are thoroughly explored. Gaspard previously worked as a journalist and solicitor in Beirut, and he lives in Beirut, Lebanon. The next speaker on the left is Mohammed El-Mafali. He is currently a researcher at the Center for Middle Eastern Studies, Lund University in Sweden. He has a fellowship from International Institute for Education and Scholar Rescue Fund in New York. He received his PhD in Arabic literature from Cairo in 2014 and worked at Hadramaut University before his PhD, but also after his PhD as an assistant professor in literature. His main research interests are the intersection of culture, literature, and society, and he's currently working on 2 research projects. The first, titled Research and Public Policy Making in the Arab World, abbreviated as RAP, and it aims, and within that project, he aims to publish an autobiography about human rights in the Arab world. The second project examines political and social transformation in Egyptian women's short stories between 2011 and 2017. El-Mafali has published 3 books in Arabic about narrative employment in modern Arabic poetry, textual transformation in modern Arab novels, and a collection of poems. Also, I think it's important to state on this occasion that he has published a large number, I think over 100 newspaper articles on different topics that concerns politics and social affairs in an Arab context. Next speaker in the middle is head librarian here at AKU SMC, but also heading a library that is a joint venture between Institute for Ismaili Studies and us. He joined AKU SMC in 2012 and was, as I said, appointed head librarian for our joint library in 2014. Prior to that, he was in various librarian roles at the American University in Cairo, and in addition, he had several consultancy roles in and outside Egypt, such as for the Ministry of Endowment, Qatar University, and the Supreme Council for Culture in Kuwait. Walid received his PhD in library science from Cairo University, but has also completed more or less all courses and worked for a master's in Islamic studies. And I think he has been making a mark here in the London and British context as a specialist in Islamic manuscript, biography, Sufism, and the history of writing. Next person is Charlotte Whiting, who joined the AKU ISMC in 2012. She is the manager of the Institute's publication department. Previously, Charlotte was deputy manager of the Iraq program of the Council for Assisting Refugee Academics, an initiative working to build research capacity at Iraqi universities. And she has completed her BA, MPhil, and PhD in archaeology at the universities of Cambridge and Durham. She has worked as an archaeologist in Jordan, but I think she's primarily here today to talk more about the translation series we have here at AKU ISMC. And when I talk about translation series, I'm talking about the series of publications we do where we translate authors who we consider or we judge as fairly progressive, and who then we translate primarily from Arabic into English. Last but not least, on the far end, Mohammed Mehtab, who is the Arabic editor of the Muslim Civilisations Abstracts project, which he joined in 2010. I presume you will speak more about that project, so I'm not going to say anything about it right now. But what I can say is that we have received the kind of donations. We will bring some new life into that project, and I think we can expand on that later on. But you are also a student here from the ISMC, and you have an MA in Muslim Cultures from the Aga Khan University. But you also hold a degree from Syria, where you from the University of Aleppo in archaeology and museum studies, and been working at various excavations and projects on culture and preservance of culture in Syria. So thank you all, thank you for coming, and thank you for coming, the audience. And then I give the floor to the first speaker, Mr. Andrew Gaspar. Thank you.
Good evening. Years ago, the saying used to go that books are written in Egypt, published in Lebanon, and read in Iraq. Move forward to the 21st century, and it could be updated to say, books are written all over the Arab world, published mainly in Lebanon and Egypt, and pirated editions of these publications are read in Iraq, Egypt, Lebanon, and other countries. Sorry about that. Generalizations are usually reductive, but the one I have just cited does reveal the vast disparity among the 22 Arab countries that make up the Arab world. If not in writing, then definitely in the areas of publishing and reading. Looking back very briefly, before the Second World War, reading was largely limited to the cultured elites of the Middle East. The few publishing houses in existence, mostly in Lebanon and Egypt, released generally beautifully edited and printed books, although not many of them, and not in large quantities either, with material ranging from classical works to contemporary writings. This situation changed dramatically in the early 50s, with the advent of alphabetization and the opening of state schools in the Mashriq and Maghreb. The sudden surge in demand of teaching materials, but also of general books, especially religious, brought numerous new players into the field. Interestingly, mostly from outside the cultured milieu, and again mostly in Lebanon and Egypt. Their business models indicate that these new entrepreneurs, this is what their name I think is, not publishers, were not concerned with the educational aspect of our profession. Rather, what they did was print and distribute tens of thousands of copies of usually badly written, badly edited, and badly printed works on cheap paper and sold for a few piastres with advantageous credit terms. When I asked one of these publishers how they could survive if retailers didn't pay them, his response was that with such high demand and with such a high markup, the risk of losses for non-payment was totally acceptable. Further, if the above-mentioned entrepreneurs thought a foreign publication might do well in an Arabic edition, they generally simply arranged for it to be translated without permission, usually by a low-paid university student. I know that also because more than one friend of mine, when we were students, were in the position of translating. Anyway, the authors and proprietors of both original and translated works were seldom financially rewarded, especially in the form of royalties. This type of publishing continued into the 70s and 80s, mainly because it suited the low buying power of most of the new readers, who were not yet very insistent on quality. The old way of elite publishing was simply swept away, and most of the established publishers were forced to either adapt or close down. We, Dar al-Saki, along with many other new publishers who started out in the 80s, are the unfortunate children of this cheap in quality and cheap in price type of publishing. To give but one example of the dilemma we faced, one of our first Arabic language publications was a beautifully produced full-color book on Arabic calligraphy, with a published price of just $4.50. Yet, not a single distributor would stock it. When I asked a prominent distributor why, he proceeded to show me the other calligraphy books he was distributing. They were badly designed, cheaply printed on poor quality paper, and selling for 50 cents to $1 each. Our challenge then was to produce quality books, both in content and form, but to offer them to Arab readers at a competitive price. This is not an easy task, believe me. And by the way, we now distribute our own books. In the 90s, and mostly at the start of the 21st century, a new generation of publishers took over, sometimes the children of publishers themselves. These were usually university graduates, many from Western universities, who had appreciated the value of well-written and produced books and wanted to publish books that they could be proud of. Today, the vast majority of titles produced in Lebanon and the Gulf countries are of good quality. Unfortunately, this improvement hasn't been widespread, and issues with printing and editorial quality persist throughout the Arab world. I am talking about excessive number of typos, grammatical errors, blank pages, inverted sections, etc. While the quality of the major Egyptian publishers' books also dramatically improved in this period, it wasn't to the same level as some of the Lebanese production. There is a reason for that: buying power. A Lebanese book retails at up to 3 times, sometimes 5, the price of a similar Egyptian book, putting it way beyond the ability of most Egyptian readers to acquire. I gave Egypt as an example. Many Arab countries faced widespread poverty. Even in Lebanon, there is a difference between the so-called dollar society, meaning families with income is in US dollars, mostly from abroad, and the rest of the population who is far poorer. As a journalist once wrote, buying a book in an Arab country is similar to buying an expensive perfume in a Western country. It is a luxury item, unfortunately. It's not only people on low income who don't have easy access to books and don't read a lot. A study carried out several years ago found that only 1% of Arab university graduates read one general interest book or more per year, 1%. Up to only a decade ago, many parents and schools were not encouraging children to read. This is now changing, thankfully. However, progress is slow, as always. But lack of buying power and lack of a widespread culture of reading are not the only issues hindering publishing in the Arab world. I wish that was. If you are foolhardy enough to publish a book criticizing, even mildly, a political system or a religious concept, or if you publish a love story which includes more than touching hands, even possibly a chaste kiss, then you run the risk of having your book banned, your whole list blacklisted, and even going to jail. Even in Lebanon, a friend of mine was jailed for a novel he had published. In these unfortunate times we live in, we must add the risk of being harassed and sometimes even physically attacked by extremists. A few years ago, for their Saki Classics collection, our sister company in London republished Professor Philip Hetty's book, History of the Druze People and Religion. Although in the English language, the book was printed in Beirut, and Dar al-Saki was distributing the book in the Middle East. One morning, colleagues arrived at Saki's Beirut office to find policemen waiting for them. Can you imagine if you're working wherever, you arrive in the morning and you see policemen, 4 or 5 policemen at the door. Anyway, they confiscated all copies of the book that they found lying around the office, then asked to be taken to our warehouse where they seized the remaining copies. Dar al-Saki was also taken to penal court. Our lawyer argued that the object of the lawsuit was an academic work first published in 1928, which contained nothing critical about the Druze religion. The lawyer representing the Druze authorities responded, however, that critical or not, we had no business publishing a book about the Druze. The fatherly judge let us go free with a warning not to repeat the offense. We learned later that it had taken only a phone call from the Druze authorities to the Minister of Interior for copies of the book to be seized before any judicial authority had been even consulted, let alone decided. If this happens in Lebanon, supposedly the most democratic and open of all Arab countries, concerning a book not even in the Arabic language, you can imagine what happens in other countries in the Middle East. I think it is safe to say that most Arab political classes are not very fond of books circulating freely in their societies. Today, censorship is widespread in the vast majority, I don't dare say all, of Arab countries. As an example, more than 60% of Dar al-Saki's titles are forbidden in one Arab country or another. But as well as official censorship, Arab societies also face societal censorship. For example, last year, students came to our stand at a book fair, asking for novels that did not mention politics, religion, or romance. Well, good luck with that. A colleague asked them jokingly what they had against love. The students answered that they had to prepare a paper for class, and their teacher had insisted on these requirements. Well, yeah. Now, can anyone think of a novel that doesn't contain anything religious, political, or anything related to love? I don't know. I've been scratching my mind. Anyway, I could give other examples, such as that many schools refused to buy one of our children's books because the cover showed a little boy and a little girl who were not siblings sitting next to each other. No. That's for censorship. So censorship is the #1 scourge of our profession. Then piracy must surely be the second. Pirated editions have been in existence for at least the past 50 years. But over the past 20 years, they have spread like a cancer. Only a handful of published titles achieve success in the Arab world, meaning selling 5,000 copies or more. This is true. So you can imagine the impact of piracy on publishers. I mean, if I publish 10 titles per year, and 2 of them are successful, and these 2 are pirated, why will I be able to pay for the other 8? Anyway, so in more than one case, we counted at least 5 different pirated editions of one of our titles, including in Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Kuwait. In Egypt, pirated editions often appear on the market on the same day as the legal one. I couldn't believe this. But more than one source swore to me that it was true, and they gave me names and examples. A few months ago, one of our fiction titles won the International Prize for Arab Fiction Award. The following day, pirated editions were being sold on the streets of Baghdad and Cairo. Although piracy is rife in almost all Arab countries, I must single out Iraq for 2 reasons. The first is that the proportion of book readers in Iraq has historically been very high compared to other countries. Secondly, since 2005, systematic pirated editions of Dar al-Saki's other titles are flooding the streets of Baghdad and other Iraqi cities. We are not the only ones. Many other Lebanese publishers are suffering from generalized piracy too. Egyptian books are also pirated in Iraq, but not as extensively, because the original price is low enough to make the pirated editions less appealing. This simply means that the market for legitimate Lebanese books in Iraq is almost nil in what was supposed to be the biggest market. It is a frightening situation. Another issue hindering reading progress in the Arab world is the lack of real data. In preparing for this talk, I was asked to provide data about the Arab publishing market, the number of yearly published titles, selling rates by categories, reading patterns, proportion of academic to non-academic publications, the impact of translation from foreign languages, etc. I am unfortunately unable to provide you with this data for a very simple reason. We are missing a crucial asset in modern book publishing and reading, namely a live bibliography of Arabic books in print. Between brackets, I will add that up to a few years ago, there were still books being published without an ISBN, which is supposed to be the core of the identity of. Okay. This means that students and professors cannot know which materials are available for their research. Readers aren't aware of the availability of books that they would like to acquire. Booksellers and publishers don't know their markets as well as they could have, and have to rely only on their experience and gut feeling in their decision-making. This lack of a comprehensive live bibliographic database means that we are all poorer culturally. One might think that the fact that Arab publishing is spread across numerous countries makes the keeping of any kind of centralized records difficult. It is true that the task is not an easy one, but taking Nielsen book data as an example, Nielsen is a live listing of all English language books in print in the world. A solution is achieved when there is a will to make it happen. And in my opinion, here is where the real problem lies. Today, it is almost unimaginable that an Arab culture or education ministry would take the initiative to promote access to information about all the books being published inside and outside their frontiers. Excluding textbooks and propaganda books, it is noteworthy that over the years, only a few publishing initiatives on the part of Arab governments have seen the light, only lasting a short period of time. There have been a few private attempts to start a live Pan-Arab bibliography project. Unfortunately, they failed for lack of means and support. Welcome. After all this has been said, I will courageously, or perhaps foolishly, attempt to offer some figures. These will not include 2 sets of publications. The first is the majority of textbooks since they are usually published by the ministries of education in the Arab countries. Also, many important religious private schools have their own publishing houses. They make a commerce of selling books to the pupils. The second set I want to include is the majority of religious books, specifically those that are mere reprints of old classics, usually bound in hardback with gold blocking, but printed on cheap paper. I think people who read Arabic are all familiar with this type of books. These books cater for an immense market and are sold in tens and sometimes hundreds of thousands of copies across the Arab world every year. However, my figures will include essays and scholarly works covering Islam and other religions, which are also popular among Arab readers. We ourselves have been privileged to publish the works of many respected authorities, such as the late Professors Muhammad Arkoun, Sohail Bushri, and George Tarabishi. Not to forget works by Dr. Farhad Daftari and Dr. Muhammad Shahrour, among others. Relying on my experience and a good amount of guesswork, I would say that around 10,000 new titles are currently published yearly across the Arab world. Over 2/3 of these in Lebanon and Egypt. The figure might have been as high as 15 or 16,000 just before the so-called Arab Spring and the war on ISIS. This, whether 10 or 15 or 16, for a general population of around 360 million, which is equivalent to the population of the United States. As a point of comparison, an average of 150,000 new titles are published yearly in the UK and 300,000 in the US. In the Arab world, very few titles see a first print run of over 3,000 copies. In recent years, we have seen even major publishers having first print runs of 2,000 and even 1,000 copies for many of their titles. That's following, again, the Arab Spring. To compare again, many British and American lead publications are printed in their tens of thousands of copies for their first run, for the popular books at least, commercial. An important issue publishers face is the tiny number of bookshops, especially outside the capital cities of the Arab world. In Lebanon, for example, I have visited many of the so-called bookshops outside Beirut. The vast majority were just stationaries and newspaper shops. Those who also stocked general interest books didn't have many on show, and they were often placed at the back of the shop where there is little footfall. The situation is replicated in almost every Arab country. Because of this, the yearly book fair that occurs in most Arab countries sees buses full of readers arriving from all parts of the country. Many save a small portion of their income for these occasions. Unlike the London Book Fair, books are sold directly to the public in all Arab book fairs. The distinction between academic and trade books is not clear-cut as in Anglo-Saxon publishing. Apart from a few academic presses, academic works usually share the same imprints with fiction, cookery books, etc. They are usually bound in paperback and marketed and sold in the same fashion as any other book. Possibly 10 to 15% of publications released per year fall in this category. Interestingly, unlike English or French publishing, we have a book category called fikr, meaning thought. It includes what I call soft academic or easily accessible academic books, which combine a loose mixture of political thought, philosophy, sociology, and other topics. These books were very popular in the 70s and 80s, at the height of nationalist and new left movements. Since then, interest in fikr books has been on the wane. For the past few years, the most popular categories were religious books, fiction, children's books, and self-help books. I am pleased that for the first time in the history of Arab publishing, attention is given, albeit modestly, to young adult fiction. Up to, I think, 5 or 6 years ago, there wasn't a single book in Arabic for the age range 9 to 15 years old. Not a single one. On the other hand, very few published books fall in the category of modern philosophy and civilization. Very bizarre. From the success of this kind of titles, which we published ourselves, I can definitely say that there is a strong demand for this type of books. I would estimate that translated works constitute 15 to 20% of total yearly production, which is not bad. It is worth noting that even today, many books are translated and published without permission from the original publishers or authors. A distinct majority of translated books is in the modern fiction category. Now to digital books. Since tens of thousands of pirated PDFs are floating around the internet, it is impossible for me to even guess a figure regarding digital downloads. A few years ago, the owner of a major Lebanese publishing house confirmed to me that a survey in the Arab Gulf countries commissioned by his own house found that 0% of the interviewees had read even one book on their smartphone or tablet. It's laughable, but anyway, talking to other publishers and from our own figures, I can say that digital reading has not really taken off. You would have guessed that much. There are now a few companies offering digital books, EPUBs, including our own, and each year one or two more appear. They're not very successful. A few months ago, Amazon started selling digitized Arabic books for Kindle. That's totally new. At this time, it is not possible to know what impact this will have. My own view is that sales of digital books will pick up over the next few years, but it will be a slow development. To finish, I am sometimes asked how it is possible to achieve success, publishing so few titles and selling so few copies to readers disseminated over 20 countries. The sad answer is that many Arab publishers are finding it hard to make it. I am sorry to offer such a bleak picture of our profession, and one can only hope that things will improve. One, they can hardly get any worse. But two, we have to be modest here. Because as long as we don't have a tolerant society, a just society, a society where the basic laws are applied. And here I must say that I think all Arab countries except Syria, if I'm not mistaken, have signed the International Convention, the one of 1996 for intellectual property and rights. And all these countries have passed laws, local laws, to implement them in their countries. But we tried a few times and failed each time because of bureaucratic conditions that we couldn't meet, or tribunals dragging their feet and us spending thousands of dollars for nothing. And our scenario has been replicated also by with other publishers. To my knowledge, I can give an example. 5 years ago, we published a book by the King of Jordan about the Middle East peace process in the Middle East. Okay? It's the King of Jordan. So we had a deal with a Jordanian distributor to distribute exclusively in the Jordanian market. And in Jordan itself, suddenly appeared a pirated edition. So the distributor called us, and we told him, well, from Lebanon, we can do nothing. I mean, we have a contract with you which allows you to go to the police, let your lawyer to talk to the police and see who this guy is. He said, we know who this guy is. I said, well, go to the police. He said, we went to the police, they did nothing. Can you do something with, not the king, but someone there at the palace? So then we contacted ourselves the palace. We spoke to passed on from one to another until we spoke to someone. And we gave the details of the police guy. And they called the police from the palace. And then the police went and caught this guy and did the preliminary inquiries, which confirmed this, and then we went to court. This was 4 or 5 years ago. We are still in court for a very simple case of piracy, which is proven and everything. 5 years and still in court. So in this situation, okay, we have to be optimistic. We have to say, but the only thing I could find to say, I will read it to you. There are some encouraging signs, such as the new widespread efforts by schools and education ministries across the Middle East to encourage children to read. I'm sorry, maybe someone else can find something, but I couldn't. That's the only thing, but it's important. I have experiences as a bookseller, as a publisher. I've seen it with my own eyes, where parents come to Al-Sati bookshop in the summer, especially when they visit from the Gulf. And whether the husband obviously has a big pile, well, the wife has a more modest pile, still. And then while they are looking at books and choosing the books they want, they either someone gives the child a book or the child picks something, a children's book, you know. They arrive at the till to pay, and what happens is that one of the parents will snatch this book from the child and put it back on any shelf or any table. And we couldn't believe our eyes. And my colleague, Mai Husub, who was responsible for the bookshop, gave instructions to everyone who worked at the bookshop that from now on, you give one book for free. You are allowed to give one book for free to the child. Don't ask for money for anything. And how many times they have seen this scene happening? This is for us. And schools never cared. I mean, I was in school myself. They never cared about children reading outside the, obviously, teaching material. But general books, I mean, no one was interested in that. Now, this picture at least is changing dramatically. And this gives us hope because children who develop the habit of reading continue to do so when they become adults. And we can hope to see a slow but steady increase of the number of readers in most Arab countries, provided the buying power of our readers, of Arab readers. Thank you very much, and sorry for taking so long.
So thank you, Andre, and please, Mohammed.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rick, for great words. And thank you, Aga Khan University, LA, Mohammed Maqdad, for this invitation to be here and participate in celebration the online launch of Muslim Civilization Abstract project. This project, I think, similar to our project annotated bibliography about human rights in the Arab world, but this project wider because it addresses the Muslim civilization knowledge, while our project concentrates on human rights sector, especially in Arabic language. Tonight, I will discuss with you some points about writer and writing in the Arab world throughout 5 axes. First, about the relationship between writers and publishers and authors. Second, the censorship and its impact on the authorship. The third, the national recognition of the author's achievements. 4, the socio-political atmosphere and the writing RAB as a project. 5, the writing and the war environment. I know the world is focusing on the wars and hot crisis over the Arab world, but we cannot isolate the culture, thought, and creativity from the policy. That the indicators show the frightening decline in the overall movement of the writing and publishing, in addition to regress in the quality of the literature, which appear to be influenced by collapsible political and social situation. First axis, the relationship between the writers and publishers. The relationship between authors and publishers varies according to the nature of the publishing institution in terms of governmental or private. The relationship between governmental publishers and authors, actually, we have two kinds of governmental publishers, academic and non-academic. The academic, although many Arab universities have university publishing centers, their production is still little and doesn't provide any academic value. In addition to these academic publishing centers, there are a number of separate governmental publishers. For example, in Egypt, الهيئة العامة للكتاب، المجلس الأعلى للثقافة، أيضا the General Authority for Culture, the Egyptian General Book Authority, the Supreme Council of Culture, the General Authority for Culture Palaces. In Saudi Arabia, a lot of literary clubs in a lot of cities. Also in Kuwait, National Council for Culture, Arts and Literature. The relationship between the authors and this institution governed by the first moral aspect, that the author seeks to publish their books in this institution as a good standing, but the difficulty, there is no clarity which author has right to publish there, and many of publication cases rely on personal relationship. The second economic aspect, these institutions are characterized by the publishing of free and the presenting of copies in addition to a certain amount of money. But I think there is no clear relationship, and we don't know if you know anyone in this institution, you can publish. If you have contact with them, you can publish. You can't publish. I submit my book on in Egypt on 2008, and it is it's not published till now. The relationship with private publishers, many Arab authors, especially academic, still prefer private institutions to publish their works in Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, Morocco, and Jordan to achieve two things. First, the capacity of distribution of books, and second, the profit can be obtained by the authors. But in general, the relationship between the author and private publishers based on mostly suspicion and mistrust. There are no fixed roles governing the relationship between them. It's based on field experience and personal interpretation. The authors accuse the publishers they don't comply with this agreement, and they add the publishing standards are often based on the author's reputation rather than the quality of product. While the publishers accuse accuse the authors that they are unfamiliar with the publishing laws. Second axis, the censorship and its impact on the authorship. We note the contradiction between the Arab constitutions and their applications. Although the fact the Arab constitutions contain articles that emphasize the freedom of expression, all these countries don't respect these articles. Even establish official departments to control the writing and restrict the writers, and exile them under various charges: inside the hatred, inside the sedition, spreading moral decay, exposure, the religious symbols, often the king, often the God, often the Quran, often prophets, often Sahaba, direct description for sexual act, etc. If we put the books on order, which censorship, the first we know the novels are the first, second intellectual books, the political books, and the poetry. So we have, there are a lot of censorship bodies. First one, media censorship, carried out by official media organs in different purpose. The second, the religious censorship, for example, in Saudi Arabia, the Committee for Promote Virtue and Prevention Bias in Saudi Arabia. Third, security censorship carried out by intelligence services and security services. Number 4, books fair censorship. It's just for book fairs. And cover censorship. This is cozy mode control, has nothing to do with the art or design, and editing. This censorship often argues that the cover suggests what is not really in the book. Third axis, the national recognition of the author's achievements. There is no clear interest in scientific research in the Arab world in general. The latest indicators show that the rate of expenditure on scientific research is not more than 0.04% of gross domestic product, and that the government sector accounts for more than 80% of the funding. The private sector is still largely absent from the scientific research. Many authors and writers are forced to work outside the field of the authorship, either in other professions or in the field of superficial writing, which lack of depth of knowledge. On the other hand, the regimes seek to support the media institutions that serve their objectives and orientations, with a real lack of support for the authoring, publishing, and scientific research. Arab research institutions are under the influence of bureaucracy laws. Laws often don't encourage the establishment of civil institutions, and there is a lack of initiative to establish civil institutions in this area. Fourth axis, the socio-political atmosphere and the writing equality, RAB as a project. RAB is research, advocacy, and public policy making. Is dedicated to providing informative and protective projects, including public lectures, open panel discussions, conferences, study and technical workshops, and the director's policy series lectures. Also, the annotated bibliography is one of this project. This annotated bibliography takes 3 stages to be completed. Number 1, identifying and collecting the relevant references, books, reports, training, guidelines, books of conferences or symposia, and electronic books. In this stage, we have collected more than 1,700 books. 2. Focused on the selection of documents to be included and analyzed within the annotated bibliography. The expertise determined 400 documents that presented the Arabic discourse in human rights area. 3. Reviewing the material and writing the abstracts that can be used online as open source information. I directly working on this stage, and I noticed 5 notes about the Arabic discourse and human rights. Number 1, most writing about human rights is mostly reports written by organizations, associations, and institutions concerned on human rights, whether national or local. Number 2, lack of human rights studies compared with reports or books, seminars and conferences, events and workshops. Number 3, if we see in these studies, the studies work on theoretical side and analyzing the text and laws without focusing on the particular aspect of the application of those laws and texts in the community. 4, regarding the subject, the reports that expose violation generally concentrate on political freedoms, the relationship between power and society, and then the freedoms of women. That means the reports concentrate on political rights, and there is decline or absent to discuss the culture or economic and social freedoms. The most important observation in this regard is the elitism in this field of human rights, that all this writing and events in narrow circles, there is no impact of the human rights culture in public space and in the education and media. Fifth axis, writing and war environment. The war strongly affects the process of writing in the Arab world. After Iraqi witnessed the civil war after the US occupation in 2003, the Arab world witnessed the largest political transformation that led to civil war in Syria, Libya, and Yemen. The war has strongly affected the writers throughout several influences. 1. Low level of the reading in general, and the activity changes to follow up the media or superficial writing in the social media. 2. Low level of authorship and transformation from writing in scientific, literary, or intellectual disciplines to policy discussions, and bias to a party or remain silent in neutral position for fear of classification to certain sides. Lack of academic protection because of the poor living condition in these countries. Instead of we see the professors, right, the research and academic, we see them struggling to survive and to provide the requirement of living. Destruction of public and private libraries, national archives, and rare manuscripts. Displacement of authors, writers, and minds to diaspora or to areas not prepared for research and writing. Cultural publications have been stopped, and the absence of book fairs in countries at risk of war, as well as the provision the publishers in these countries to participate in other countries either for security reasons or for political consideration. Most of the budget is allocated to war efforts. The influence of the war on the economic and decline of the exchange rate against the dollar and the difficulty of the shipping because of the lack of transmission lines. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed, and welcome, Walid.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm a bit of dilemma here because before the seminar, I was thinking how I'm going to read all of this in 10 minutes. But now I think that I don't have anything to say. Maybe I'll just reflect on the previous presentations. So bear with me if there is any repetitions that I will mention. But I'll find something to say anyway. Okay, it gives me great pleasure to participate in this important and timely event, which is organized by the Muslim Civilization Abstract. And as Mohammed will mention, this is one of the many important initiatives of the Institute for the Study of Muslim Civilizations. And one of the things that I wanted to start with is go back to history and by asking a question which is of fundamental importance to our seminar this evening. Did Muslim scholars possess the epistemological concept of the organization and classification of knowledge in the first few centuries? Answering this question is not so easy, straightforward, but a glance at the 10th century survey of Islamic culture by Muhammad ibn Ishaq ibn Nadim enables us to say that Muslims realized the importance of knowledge organization before bibliographical science was established. As most of you probably know, Ibn Nadim work, known as Kitab al-Fihrist, literally means the catalog. It is an index of all the books written in Arabic either by Arabs or non-Arabs and contains 10 discourses. I'm not going to mention the details, but I will mention a quotation here by Devin Stewart in his study on the structure of the Fihrist. He mentions, and I quote, "Countless specialized studies have used the Fihrist as a source of data because it includes the titles of works that are no longer extant, as well as bibliographical information on little-known early authors. It throws light on otherwise obscure facts of medieval history in many fields." The reason I mentioned Ibn Nadim is to emphasize that Muslims realized the importance of bibliographical works, and I also wanted to shed light on the gap in the field of bibliographical works about the literature published in the Middle East and Arab world. In order to understand the increasing demand for projects that involve knowledge organizations, such as indexing and abstracting services, I want to mention something about knowledge management lifecycle. Although there is no hard and fast rule for the stages of knowledge management, one could identify 4 key stages for the knowledge management: creation, mobilization, dissemination, and communitization of the knowledge. And I don't want to go through most of the details, but that was necessary introduction as to position publishing in the landscape of knowledge management in the Arab world. In the next few minutes, my aim is to focus on 3 main aspects. First is to share with you some general observation about the current book trade in the Arab world, which has been covered by the previous presentations, obviously. Secondly, the role of the libraries that play in the knowledge management and dissemination of knowledge. And finally, to discuss bibliographies as a tool in the process of knowledge organization and creation. So about the publishing in the Middle East, I'm not the best person now to talk about publishing, as it was covered by the previous speakers. But when I started to prepare for today's seminar, I thought it would be easy for me to obtain some statistics and information about Arab publishing. Given that I know people, librarians, and people who work in different institutions in Egypt and Kuwait and Qatar, most of the places that I've been working in. But I realized after many phone calls, emails, and even Facebook posts that everybody just responded in one standard answer: "Good luck in this. It's not easy, job." And that's it. That said, there are some reports available online about book trade in the Arab world. For example, the annual report of the Arab Publishing Association, and it was noted that in 2011, with the beginning of the political unrest in the Middle East, an important market in Syria was closed, and there was a 50% drop in the number of publications compared with 2010. This is one of the statistics that been shared online. We could say that the same thing about the home countries of the Arab Spring, like Egypt, Tunisia, and Libya. On 30th June 2013, the English page of Sharq al-Awsat newspaper published its debate series to feature the publishing industry in the Arab world. Rana Idris, director of Dar al-Adab, the leading Lebanese publisher of Arabic quality fiction, considered that, and I quote, "The Arab world is facing a publishing crisis, mainly due to the high level of piracy on printed and e-books, but first and foremost to the closure of the market in different countries." Now I will go straight to some of the aspects that have been discussed by the second speaker, which is the poor relationship between authors and publisher. And it was stated that there has been a crisis in relation between authors and publishers. But in response to this poor relation and to avoid any potential rejection of his works, I will give one example here by publishers. One of the authors decided to establish an online publishing platform where authors can upload their works online if they've been rejected by publishers. This online publishing was established by Jamal al-Jazairi, known as Dar Humartak al-Argam. And the name carries an Arabic proverb that means better make do with what you have. And the reason he gave this memorable name to his project is to illustrate the relationship between publishers and authors. I mean, if the publisher is mean to you, you just can't put things online. The second point is the lack of statistics and figures about the book production. And the figures that circulate anyway are always fragmentary, taken from various reports, various resources, and impossible to check. Their reliability depends most of the time on the authority of the speaker, and I will share some few examples in a few minutes. The third barrier is the absence of a publishing structure and the weak role of the institutions that organize the publishing industry in the Arab world. To this end, it was saying a few words about the Ittihad al-Nashirin al-Arab, the Arab Publishers Association, but since I'm short on the time, I can share the presentation later on. But the Ittihad al-Nashirin al-Arab, or this association, was established during the General Conference for Arab Publisher that was held in Beirut in April 1995. The Arab Publisher Association consists of Arab local association represented by a member for each one in the board members. And this association should look after publishers as well as authors. In line with the principle of the association, which is supposed to protect authors and publishers' rights, censorship remains one of the main obstacles in the Arab book trade. Censorship is known to be strict in certain countries, such as Saudi Arabia, and less severe in Lebanon. The other countries range between those two extremes. And I don't want to mention the examples of the Saki bookshop that have been prevented from Saudi Book Fair, Saudi Arabia Book Fair in 2007. The overthrow of dictatorship in several Arab countries has raised hopes of overcoming censorship. For example, enthusiastic accounts came from Tunisia and Egypt after the revolution in 2011, celebrating the return of books that had been banned under the previous regime. And here are some examples of these banned books. But 1 year later, Debates and protests started again when the post-revolution government started to impose their own limitation on the freedom of expression. The decrees of political censorship threatened to be counterbalanced by an increase of religion censorship in the meantime. And in the current unstable situation, the struggle for freedom of expression in all its forms is still ongoing. Now let me move on to another point, which is the libraries and readership in the Arab world. There is a direct relationship between the proper functioning of libraries and enhancement of the publishing and book trade. If the Arab world is facing a publishing crisis due to limited markets and low readership, libraries could contribute to the resolution of this crisis. A recent report issued by the Association for Research Libraries, ARL, concluded that publishing services are rapidly becoming a norm for research libraries. And this shows how difficult it is to have a knowledge society without libraries. Libraries nowadays has become a cultural hub where new research can be developed, debates take place, and knowledge can be disseminated. But what libraries in the Arab world are supposed to do? First, in order for libraries to live up to the challenge of efficiently capturing the material, to feed the emerging methodological trends in scholarship and teaching, they have to understand the working of regional book publishing and distribution. The very clear example is after 9/11, the increase of the Arabic and Middle Eastern collection in the United States libraries, it doubled after the 2011. A small comparison between 2001 and 2002, the number of Middle Eastern collection in the most of United States libraries have been doubled. So the second point is the role of libraries to improve readership in their respective communities. And readership, as well as publishing, is another aspect that is hard to measure in the Arab world. We hear the assertions such as Arabs read 6 minutes a year on average, a widely quoted figure not backed by any statistical evidence. On the other hand, some reports mention that there is no shortage of readers in the Arab world, rather that there is in fact an abundance of Arab keen to read, both in the region itself as well as in the growing diaspora abroad, and that they are consuming content across multitude of topics and platforms, with a discerning eye towards high quality customized Arabic content. But those are two extreme positions which can be easily questioned. But quite apart from propaganda and defensive positions, most Arab publishers agree that the reading rates are low in the Arab world. This can be partially explained by the literacy levels. The average adult literacy rate was 72.9% according to UNDP's Arab Development Change Report 2011. There is another report on readership average in the Arab world that was prepared by Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Foundation and the United Nations Development Program, summarized this phenomena in a few points. I'm going to finish. The report admitted, first of all, the report admitted that there is a problem in the readership average, and there is discrepancy in the meantime in the figures mentioned in different reports and different platforms. Despite the fact that many rich countries in the Arab region are building new libraries, most of these libraries are not hospitable spaces for readers. On the other hand, there are other countries which suffer from a lack of public and school libraries, and the clear example now closing down some of the community of public libraries in Egypt. Obviously, this unbalanced distribution has a direct effect on the readership statistics. Either way, there is a need for the existing libraries to reassess their roles in supporting the evolving needs and behaviors of their readers. In doing so, the libraries should be able to identify opportunities to actively shape scholarly communication environment and to undertake a range of initiatives. And here just I mentioned briefly some of the initiatives like creating institutional repositories, open access initiatives, and providing customized bibliographical and indexing services to researchers. Among the key roles mentioned above, there are 2 points that of very relevant of our talk tonight. The first one is the open access, and this is the long discussion, and I need to just jump ahead. But I just want to mention one statistics. Currently, there are approximately 2,900 open access digital repository internationally listed on the directory of open access repository, which is an authoritative quality assured world directory of academic open access repository, which about 37 repositories in Arab states and 525 open access journals published in Arab countries. And this is very low number comparing with the international open access initiatives. On the other hand, there are several Arabic websites offer a free download of books, some of them pirated, some of them genuine, but that are still in print and not free of rights. Here are some figures from the only one which are relatively transparent and present indications about the volume of download. This one just shows the number of downloads by subjects. And this one again needs lots of discussion and revision, because as you see, the top subjects are Quran and the Hadith, and books for iPhone and iPad. It's very contradictory results. Studies have shown that throughout the Arab world, religious books constitute 17% of all books published in Arab countries, compared to 5% of worldwide. The second highest sellers are novel with original titles better than translation. To conclude, we cannot make any assertion that paper books will disappear, at least not those addressing common readers. And this I heard from one of the most famous vendors in the Middle East. I was with him on the phone, and he said the printed versions of books are not going to disappear. Just forget about it, at least in the Arab world, and in very specific subjects. The second point is the impact of bibliographical projects, and this would have a direct impact on publishing landscape by increasing the awareness of people about the resources published in the Middle East. And just to conclude, I mean, I started my presentation by mentioning Ibn Nadim, the great bibliographer, and the extent of which is crucial to have similar works nowadays. Bibliography, as defined by many scholars, is a twofold scholarly work. It's not just a mechanical work or a cataloging work. It's a real scholarly work. In the Middle East, national bibliographies still are the predominant type of bibliographies. The reason, of course, because it's funded by the government and it follows the national libraries and it follows the legal deposit legislation or rules. Morocco and Tunisia have published their national bibliographies consistently and have made them accessible, albeit in different forms and to a different extent on the web portals. Just to conclude, I just want to say that bibliographies help to increase users' awareness regarding the characteristics of the landscape of Arab publishers, and there is a need for authors, publishers, libraries to work collaboratively in this field just to enhance the awareness and to produce better products. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Walid and Charlotte, please.
So I'd like to start by thanking Mohammed for organising this event and for inviting me to say a few words about ICMC publications in relation to the landscape of Arab publications. So the speakers before me have mostly been highlighting the many challenges faced by Arab publishers, and of course we face those too at ICMC to a greater and lesser extent. But when Mohammed first started talking about this event and he was discussing the title for it, it was really the word opportunities that jumped out, which might sound surprising, but I'll explain my reasons for this. I suppose the other speakers have also touched on this, that in recent years, of course, due to, I guess, negative reasons, there is a heightened interest generally in the Arab world and Muslim contexts around the world. And this includes an increased debate and discussions on academic levels as well. And at ICMC, as an academic institute, of course, we can't feed into this heightened interest through literature and so on, but we can do so through academic publications. And we do a range of different books, but for this particular event, the ones that are relevant are the ones that we translate from Arabic. And I suppose I should start with a disclaimer in the sense that as ISMC, we're able to do these types of translations of what are often quite niche books, I guess, in general. They're not just academic, but they're also sometimes published a long time ago, and they appeal to very specific audiences. But we are a mission-based organization, and therefore our business model is not for profit, and I think that really helps us in being able to take on projects that perhaps other publishers are simply not able to take on. They're just not viable for profit reasons, but we are. So I just have a few books up here on the slides of titles that we've most recently translated from Arabic. Obviously there's no time to go through them in great detail, but I just thought I'd highlight some of the more recent ones and the titles that are forthcoming this year, just so you have an idea of the sorts of things that we take on. So on your left, you'll see a book by Hussein Ahmed Amin, which is The Sorrowful Muslim's Guide. It's a book that's going to be published later this year. It's a book published by an Egyptian author in 1983, won the Cairo Best Book Prize in 1984, and it can best be described as a work of modern Islamic humanism. So it covers a range of subjects, but it really is a critical take on modern Islamic thought. So we're very pleased to have that as part of our list. Then we also have a book by Aziz Al-Azmi, which is his 1992 publication on the history of secularism, I guess you could describe it as. And it's, it's really rather remarkable that a scholar of Aziz's stature has never, this particular work has never been translated into English, despite the fact that it's been a very influential text and is included on many university curricula around the Arab world. So again, very, very pleased to have that on our list. And then lastly, on the right here is a book by Georges Ghosn, who's a very prominent Lebanese economist, and he's written a history of Arab political thought, so he's looking at various individuals, but also movements, and he traces their thought throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. So you'll notice that 3 of the covers there have matching cover art, and that's because they are part of the same series, which is our In Translation Modern Muslim Thinkers Theory, just Leif already highlighted at the beginning of the evening. And this series really, I think more than any other, really fits in with the mission and vision of ISMC, as I've mentioned, that we're a mission-based organisation. And so the idea behind this series really is that, although there is this increased debate worldwide about Muslim societies, and therefore also the Arab world, really it's missing a lot of literature and intellectual output that is published in those contexts. And of course, that's a glaring gap. So the aim of the series is to identify some of those key works, to translate them into English, and to make them available, and hopefully, to enter into this global debate, to sort of equal out and make it more inclusive and hopefully more balanced. Now, within the series, there's one particular book that I want to highlight, and that is this one by Ali Abdul-Razik, Foundations of Islam and the Foundations of Political Power. And I wanted to highlight this one in particular because it's a book that was published in 1925. It caused a huge outcry at the time of its publication. Intense debate was held around the subject of the book, and it's also a book that you can still find in many editions in the Middle East today. It's still widely read, and very, very popular and controversial still. And although it's it's an old text, it's not an easy read. It's you can describe it as very niche. This is perhaps surprisingly one of ISMC's best-selling titles. And added to that, so recently we've launched our digital open access repository for the university, and all of our books that are out of copyright embargo are uploaded onto that site, so you can download those titles for free. And I think this book is a really interesting example where it's been downloaded 3 times as many times as any other title that we've published, including the titles that outsold it initially when we published it. And not only that, but you would imagine a book like this to be popular in academic circles. So using this university repository, you can drill down and see where books have been downloaded. And so if you look at global academic centres, you would imagine Europe, North America, Australia, and so forth to have a large number of downloads, which there are. But the interesting thing is that there are equally high numbers of downloads in places like Southeast Asia, South Asia, and Africa, which I think says a lot. And added to that, so on this repository, the other thing you can do, as I said, you can drill down to the country where it's downloaded, the city, but actually using Google Maps, you can find, often the building where it's being downloaded, which means that we have some data about the types of people that are downloading this text. So again, for a niche book, you might imagine that it's mainly academics and students, and of course, many of the downloads are at universities and clusters around universities. I guess we can extrapolate that that's students who are buying, or sorry, downloading books in this case for their reading lists. But what's interesting is it's also being downloaded in many businesses, in governmental institutions, non-governmental institutions, charities, all sorts of, a wide range of places. So I think, just by pulling this book out, I think it's a really interesting example of the appetite that is out there for this type of text, which may not be immediately obvious. And so, well, I mentioned the word opportunity at the beginning, which I said might be surprising, but due to a variety of factors at ISMC, so our not-for-profit basis, the fact that we have this open access platform, and the fact that we can publish these types of texts, I think is a really positive opportunity, because we're able to really work to disseminate works that are really key, I think, currently, certainly in the current climate, and disseminating intellectual works produced in the Arab world. So I think I've used my allotted time, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlotte, and welcome, Mohammed.
Well, thank you very much for bearing with us. I would probably put myself on Charlotte's side, like people with optimism about the application in the Arab world, or hoping probably to find something optimistic about it, at least trying to do something. So I'll speak about the project, the MCA project, and its initiative, and then I'll speak about how we are trying to tackle the issue of applications in different Muslim contexts, and specifically the Arab ones. So please allow me to read, so then I could finish quickly, and then everybody could go for the questions. In the era of globalization and mass communication, Muslim cultures, including the Arab ones, are still marginalized and probably neglected, which has endangered the local sources of knowledge and made them increasingly voiceless on international level. Generally, extant primary sources have the advantage of being preserved by being archived and explored by several researchers. However, secondary sources are often neglected and overlooked. As such, scholarship in Europe and North America is impoverished because of its lack of awareness of contemporary Arab academic endeavors, for example. In 2003, the Aga Khan University launched the Muslim Civilisations Abstracts project in order to fill such an intellectual gap. The aim was to give free access to invaluable academic works, mainly books published by Arab and Muslim scholars in their local languages. However, due to the magnitude of the publications available and the massive systematic efforts needed, it was decided to begin with collecting short book reviews, we call them abstracts, on certain themes, and make them available to external users for free in English, Arabic, and Turkish. The MCA strives to bring to the forefront often overlooked publications and to facilitate dialogue between scholars from the region themselves. Therefore, the MCA steadily seeks to reinforce collaboration with Arab researchers to promote scholarship produced in their area. As a result, out of more than 1,000 abstracts on 6 different themes, namely encyclopedia, law and ethics, cities, governance, gender, education, we have more than 22% on Arabic books. In comparison, for example, we have 35% on Turkish books and 30% of the abstracts on Persian books. However, in terms of contributors, it was to my surprise to find that like we have more than 50% of our contributors are coming from the Arab countries. So we have about 66 abstractors, 43 translators, and more than 15 editors. However, since 2011, the tangible and intangible intellectual asset of the Arab world have been endangered by the socio-political upheaval. Libraries and precious collection of books that have disappeared. And hordes of academics and writers have been killed, imprisoned, immigrated, or simply dropped silent due to censorship or wars. Such situation led Arab academics to question the feasibility of building cultural bridges when their countries are about to collapse, and to lose hope in any international academic support. Therefore, considering such kind of urgency, it was obligatory for the MCA team to change its mandate and to broaden it up, and to move it from sharing produced knowledge in the Arab countries to preserve and document its existence first. In doing so, three types of challenges have been hindering the endeavors to achieve the newly developed objectives. So firstly, we had some kind of technological challenges, especially that we are dealing with Arabic language, and we know that digital platforms are not really kind of welcoming to non-Latin scripts. Secondly, we have the inaccessibility to the publication landscape of the Arab world, where publishing industry is very limited, and the translation process from or into Arabic is extremely poor, as we saw from Andre and Walid's presentations. Thirdly, the fatal threat to the existence of academic institutions and scholars in most of the Arab countries. I mean, I came to know, I mean, in Raqqa, for example, there was a bookshop. It's called Boursaid, and it was very well known for the people, I mean, who grew up with the Nasserist kind of mentality. So they know this bookshop, and unfortunately, it was just burned by ISIS. So we could imagine what happened, for example, to Al-Mutanabbi Street in Iraq and other bookshops, for example, that have been attacked everywhere else in the Arab world. However, since we are speaking about challenges and opportunity, the NCA team perceives the project as a challenging opportunity itself. That should not be given up on easily. Luckily enough, such belief has always been respected and supported by the Institute and its leadership. Therefore, last year, we were able to build our first online platform, and we have been testing it around the second volume, which is on law and ethics. This volume, it has about 36% of its abstracts on Arabic books. And these abstracts were made accessible and downloadable online for free. I'll show it to you. So this is our website, and you could go and find out. We have about 220 books. So the abstracts of these books are available in Arabic, Turkish, English, and will be downloadable. And hopefully, I mean, all the time I try to check that it is very kind of very friendly with different kind of devices that you could use. However, when we analyze the data of the visitors of this website, we found that like this website appeared in Google search of more than 140 countries for people. And we found 15 countries from the Arab world were checking our website. Morocco, Egypt, Algeria, Saudi Arabia, Tunisia, Jordan, Qatar, Iraq, Kuwait, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, Bahrain, Libya, Palestine. However, we have only 41 visits from these countries. In comparison, we have 94 from Turkey, 78 from the UK, and 65 from Indonesia, 35 from Pakistan. Moreover, to overcome the complexity of the landscape, the complexity of the Arab publications landscape and the cruelty of the threats to the academics and the institutions, the NCA has launched two sets of activities. The first one is to engage actively with the players of the publication industry, such as publishers, authors, distributors, etc., and introduce them to our audience in an event like today's talk. So we want to bring the players of this industry together with the audience to speak about it, so then at least we could know what challenges we are facing, what kind of landscape we have in front of us. And I hope now that our previous presenters were able to give you a bit of sense about the complexity of this landscape. The second activity is to launch what we call the MCA Special Project Initiative. This initiative aims to investigate and document produced literature around certain geographic areas, such as, for example, MCA Maghreb, in collaboration with Dr. Majid Hannoum. He is here. And we are trying to explore the Maghreb, the idea of Maghreb, and all the literature related to it. Also, we are investigating in another initiative around books published in Arabic around certain themes, like the collaboration with RAB project. So Dr. Mohammed Mahfali is here tomorrow to explain, to expand more this collaboration and to discuss it further. At the same time, since the MCA is not only about the Arab context only, we have here with us Dr. Rune Steenberg from Copenhagen University. So we launched an interesting project. It's called MCA Uyghur Language. So what we want is that to explore and investigate about the literature published in Xinjiang province in China, and hopefully we'll be able to provide the users of our websites and our readers with some kind of information about the knowledge produced in Xinjiang and by Uyghurs. So these kind of initiatives actually enables us to build stronger academic partnerships with our colleagues and visiting researchers to our university. At the same time, it gives us access to impenetrable contexts, such as, for example, the Xinjiang example, or sometimes probably, for example, Palestinian writers in Gaza, or, I mean, all these difficult contexts, we could access them through these kind of collaborations. However, with both the special project initiatives and our cross-Muslim context thematic projects mentioned earlier, some might say that we are stretching ourselves in many scattered directions rather than focusing on one aspect, which might lead to to have less impact on the context that on our audience. It could be true for the time being. However, with the available fund, thanks to the ISMC director, Professor Leif Stenbeck, that he mentioned earlier on, we will be able to put all the pieces together under one online free accessible multilingual database and website, which are being designed now, and we hope to launch them by the end of this year. Along with giving international access to less known Arab and Muslim publications, this development aims to provide a platform for researchers from different disciplines, as well as general educated users, to access dynamic space, to engage with each other, and to generate more contextualized academic discussions informed by the Arab and Muslim current debates on themes that could be of global interest. The end result of this initiative will support the Aga Khan University's endeavors in shaping global humanity, founded in a mutual understanding and shared common ethics and values. It will help build knowledge bridges between diverse Muslim contexts, including Arab ones, and the rest of the world, to enhance human solidarity and to eliminate preconceived stereotypes and prejudices that have been unfairly stigmatizing Muslim and Arab culture for decades. Thank you very much for listening to and for your attention.
So thank you, Mohammed, and thank you all presenters. The floor will now be open for questions and comments. I think we have a microphone somewhere, and please wait until you are receiving the microphone since there are participants online.
Nasser Kalamoun. I tried once to, after I finished my PhD, to publish my book in Arabic, and I was put off in Beirut by many scenarios. Anyway, to sum it up, that it would be better to publish in English or any other foreign language, and that's to Mr. Kaspar, before you dare to publish in Arabic, because you get like a clean bill of health if it is published in Latin, for instance, or in English or French. So that's number one. Number two, the sponsorship. that many of people who publish with publishing houses, they sponsor their own books. They are from, they earn good money, or some government departments do sponsor them. Like you pay $3,000, you get 2,000 copies, you give it free to your friends. What do you think about this in matters of people choosing in matters of to support publishing houses by money, or by people who have money, not necessarily the successful ones, worthy to be published out of their own outlines? Do you think it's true? Thank you.
Is it working?
That's fine, that will pick you up.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I think it's true. I don't think it's correct.
You need to speak up.
That's fine.
I think it's true. It's working here. I think it's true, but I don't think it's correct. It happens. Unfortunately, I mean, there are distinctions to be made, okay? It's not a black and white situation. To my knowledge, all the publishers I know worldwide, not just Arab publishers, but French publishers, German publishers, British publishers, it happens that they do sponsored books. But usually, these books are sponsored by institutions. Like, for instance, a petroleum company might decide to sponsor some art books or something like that. Sometimes you have rich individuals who want to publish something they have written, or their collection of art, or something like that. Also, these books usually are sponsored. What is not acceptable, in my opinion, sorry, it's only my opinion, is that for normal books, whether academic or fiction or whatever, that it should be a policy of any publishing house to ask money from the author to publish. Sometimes, here again, it's not black and white. Sometimes I can think only for poetry, because poetry doesn't sell at all. I mean, fiction sells badly sometimes, or other books. Poetry doesn't sell. And sometimes the collection of poetry is excellent. And sometimes the publisher doesn't want to take the risk 100%. So then he will ask the poet if he can buy, say, 200 copies or 500 copies maximum, at a discounted price, obviously. So, but it is uncommon, and it shouldn't be the rule. When it comes to other languages, I don't think the Arab market is affected by, unless something is a bestseller, and which is not the case of academic books usually, or PhD thesis, unfortunately. Otherwise, it's still a different mentality, different market, different. I don't know. Academic books are hard to sign, and PhD thesis. I mean, in our experience ourselves, the PhD thesis that we published ourselves, mostly in English, I should say, we had to rework the text, especially the first part, and usually removing the first chapter altogether. So that's it. But I know that authors complain a lot about this, the greedy publishers, basically.
My name is Martin Rowe. I just wanted to ask a sort of a follow-on question from that. It seems to me there are two things in academic publishing which are crucially important and which are lacking. One is the quality control offered by peer review, and the other is an effective distribution system. And if you can't guarantee the quality of the books that you're publishing, then it's very hard to see how they can be entered into an international system of even electronic distribution. And in a culture where where deference overrules criticism in terms of looking at colleagues and superiors' works, it's very hard to establish that effectively. Secondly, it seems that distribution is a major failure, not just internationally in the Arab world, but nationally. I spent several years living in Rabat and discovered that in order to obtain a book from a publisher in Casablanca, I had to go and get it because it wouldn't be available necessarily or predictably in a bookshop in the capital city, a mere hour's train journey away. And if that's true of that distance, then you only have to look further south or anywhere else in the country. You've got a huge problem, a sort of massive constipation of the system of book distribution. I think those two problems both need to be addressed.
Can we do something about the microphone?
Sorry, it was answered the question. It was a comment. It was a comment.
Such a sad indictment of the publishing scene in the Middle East. What is interesting is that in my travels to Frankfurt Book Fair and London Book Fair over the years, is how opulent the stands are for the Middle East. I mean, they're often the most expensive, laid out stands, and I think almost every year I spend a bit of time, perhaps at least 2 or 3 hours, just wrecking the place, trying to talk to people. Often very difficult to find someone to talk to. And often these people who they employ, by the way, these are often run by UAE, Kuwait, and of course Saudi Arabia and a few others. And what is surprising is that when you talk to them, they will tell you that actually they are making an effort to improve the quality of publications, and they spend huge amount of money in the production of the books. Frankly, the production of the books are shoddy because they look they're obviously expensively produced, but you can sense that the quality of the editorial skill and the layout and so forth is, well, it's tardy to say the least, actually. And you try and explain, actually, they could employ some guy in Ukraine and Russia. I tell them, actually, because if you want to do that, if you don't trust a publisher in England or France, you can get somebody from Ukraine and Russia for next to nothing to help you show you how to do these things. You know, these skills are widely available in these parts of the world, and some of them are Arabists. You know, in Ukraine and Russia, there are excellent, Arabist skills which are available for very little money. And I also, a number of times I've asked them, what's happening in bibliographies and so forth. They say you can actually go to USIS. The Americans are doing a good job. Of course, the Library of Congress is doing a pretty good job, but they're being done for a different purpose, actually. So, and I want to thank the Al Khan University for doing this. It's quite extraordinary that a university based in London is doing this. They really deserve our thank you. Really do. Thank you.
Okay. There will be questions as we move on forward, and then we let the panelists comment upon this. I have one here on the front as well, and then you down there. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Hussein Mahdi. I have 3 points to make quickly. The first is that, as you mentioned, there's no political will, because usually, the free thought and exchange of ideas is to do with democracy and the government's will to actually improve the situation. I don't think that it is a coincidence or it is just happening like that. I think that it is by design. that a big percentage of the population remain illiterate, and the poverty and the way the infrastructure for publishing and so on is not good. I don't think, I feel it is by design. And so it's not really like it's a bad situation and let's work to improve it, but also there is an enemy that somewhere there that we cannot really put our finger as, you know, but there is a very strong force against this. So I think we should really remember this. The second point is about the academic publishing. I mean, like, if copyrights are not respected, you know, and not protected by law or by police or so on, then of course academic publication will be vulnerable to plagiarism. So when you have an academic work, you would rather publish it in any other language so that you can get the proper credit for it. That's a problem. And the last point for Mohammed regarding this fantastic project is the question of terminology when you are moving between these languages. Just to make a little point is that the title of our event today, it includes landscape, which I don't think has an equivalent in Arabic. So just to start with, you need to explain it, to spend a paragraph to explain to somebody what do you mean really by landscape. So I think there is a need for work on terminology moving between these languages.
Anyone who want to comment on?
Okay, I'll just respond to the
landscape thing.
I think the mic is not working, so.
Yeah, no worries. I can't shout. Don't worry. I think you are right. I mean, the question of terminology is applicable for every translation effort. Between two different languages, you have two different minds, different set of minds, different way of thinking, and always we try. I mean, this is our daily business: is to negotiate really between the two languages or three languages. And this is, I mean, thanks to our editors and translators. Actually, they are doing really fantastic job, because sometimes they really, I mean, when you are offering the abstracts of the book, you might not really be able to convey the exact terminology that the book is able to do. That's why the abstract is meant to be something like gives you something like probably general introduction about the book itself. But at the same time, we try really to stick to academic standards in terms of translation and editing. And sometimes really, I mean, we ignore the beauty of the language for the sake of the meaning itself.
Please.
Yeah, I have a question to you also. They're referring to the previous question with regards to peer review. I mean, in a way, to what extent are your abstracts peer reviewed or something close to peer review? And the second question is, how do you source your staff, or the people who work for you, who create those abstracts, who create translations, and how does that go together?
So in terms of peer reviewing, actually, I mean, we are now at different stage. Probably we are going to be changing our workflow, because previously we used to publish in volumes, in hard copy books. So we had kind of reviews from the editors themselves, because when we select our editors, usually they should be somebody who is qualified really to do the editing, academic person, relevant to the discipline, and is able really to negotiate between English and the other languages, because we deal with 8 languages. So now I think with moving toward the online process, we are thinking of creating a more kind of space that the peer reviewing is going to be more systemized in a way, like we'll have a specialist in each subject doing the peer review. But until we establish this space, I mean, we are not able really to tell exactly about the peer reviewing. So about your question, the other question is?
Yeah, I actually had another question which I haven't phrased. Is that right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the first part. The second is, to what extent are you considering to remediate this content into kind of, or feed it into wider platforms, more international platforms, and have you had negotiations at that time?
We are very happy for any kind of collaboration, and these abstracts are for free to be used. And even when we decided to upload them online, we uploaded them like in a Word format to be flexible and to be used by other platforms. I mean, there is a kind of copyright for the university just for the abstract, but at the same time, our aim is really to disseminate these kind of abstracts for free to everybody, wherever they are and however they could get it. So I think, I mean, if there is anybody interested in that, we are very happy. You could just pop into my office. I could upload all the abstracts on your USB stick, and you are most welcome.
Okay. Not a bad offer, so please.
I guess there's no microphone. My question is around to the panel, of course, and you're welcome to choose who would like to respond. Is around the use of technology. It's 21st century, of course, and we see that the Arabic literature is not really that to that level yet to have saturated that digital market. How do you think the role of technology? How can that help the dilemmas that we discuss in here? Now that we have things like natural language processing, AI, machine learning, from that perspective, how can we create an environment that can perhaps automate translation and with the use of the peer review processes, perhaps create knowledge, but at the same time disseminate it to a wider audience on the internet?
Well, it's a difficult question. I mean, but in light of the digital humanities, if you mean digital humanities initiatives, as you might know, Arabic languages was still a bit difficult to be processed by digital humanity projects. But if I'm allowed to mention that the AKU ISNC working on a project, digital humanities project, where they achieved a really good ratio of scanning and OCRing of Arabic language. I'm not at liberty to mention the details, but it's another project that ISNC is working on, and I think very soon we can do some efforts and disseminate more knowledge about this project. But in terms of publishing, if you mean publishing, utilizing technology in publishing, I think there are many initiatives in the Arab world, especially in the Gulf side. The Arab Online project or Arabic Library Online has been managed by UAE, United Arab Emirates, and they are collaborating with all libraries in order to put up any digital copies that they have, so they can facilitate the access and dissemination of knowledge. I don't think that for retrospective projects, for old publications, it would be easy a project, because most of the publishers in the Arab world, they have no InDesign copies of their publications. So if you ask them to start putting things online or digitize things, they have to start over. They have to start from scratch.
If I may answer that question. In fact, this question has been delaying the project to go online for more than 4 years, actually. And we know that computers is not made to speak Arabic, or to speak, I mean, Arabic situation in Arabic language is in a better situation than, for example, Urdu or Persian that we have to deal with. So we will have to wait, actually, technology until they are able to speak. I mean, Google Translator, for example, we know how disastrous is the translation. It's not only for Arabic. We could take, for example, Turkish as well. So we are, I mean, huge money is being put, for example, about Chinese languages to be processed in computer. But I mean, for Arabic, really for Arabic, Persian, Urdu, we are still very much behind. And probably investing technology in producing publication is different from having technology for understanding what is the language of these publications. So probably we should differentiate between the both. We hope that at some point we are able to achieve something that we could make Arabic language is really understandable by computers and by processors.
Okay, I think that will be the last one, please.
Well, given the much of fun Islamic Heritage Foundation in London, Just a side note, because we're publishers as well as a research foundation, and our material, even the head office is in London, we have an office in Jeddah and an office in Cairo. And what we've noticed, I mean, one of the reasons also, maybe, I mean, I have to say, I'm not very happy with the word, the Arab world don't read much. Not because I'm just Arab, it's because the Arab world sometimes, as we've noticed, have difficulties to get to the Arab book. And that's why we have students who ask for funding to travel to book fairs because they can't pay online. The credit card system or the payment online is not possible. And that is funny because it's not because the book is not available in their country, but they don't know that the book is available in their country. So when they search, because the search engines are only identifying books that are overseas and so on, the publisher happens to be overseas. So there is a dislocation of who published what, when, how can I get it? And so this is what we've noticed as the foundation, as a publisher and as a research institute, and because we attend also book fairs in most of the Arab countries and internationally. But the crisis that we're noticing increasingly is this person knowing about the book and being able to purchase the book for their studies, for example. So stock, shipment, payment, this is all nothing really to do with the Arab reader not getting to the book. And again, here I'm not blaming the publishers or the people who represent the publishers or anyone. And I really think maybe I'm going to have to take a positive spin on this, is that everybody are trying their best. But I think it comes down to infrastructure and also these different, I mean, we are a non-profit organization, so I don't have a particular agenda when I'm saying this, other than the user and the researcher best interest at heart. I think there is a discrepancy and there isn't a communication between these parties who blame each other. Universities included, librarians included, libraries included. I am part of Malcolm UK and Malcolm International, which we're trying to bring librarians of the Middle East, for example, together. And increasingly, this is something we notice with the researchers, with students. So maybe something I'm putting forward here for everybody to think about, whoever is involved, is initiatives like this are great. But how can initiatives like this, for example, I can't help imagining these abstracts appearing next to the book that is in WorldCat for someone to know that is available in this library or can be purchased in this book fair. How can we make these links? I know initiatives are in digital humanities to make these links, but I think we can get, I mean, the easiest thing is to get angry at each other. That's fantastic, and it's a release, and everybody's like, oh my God. But there is a serious problem, and I'm only speaking behind to the voice of the person who's possibly at an A level now, not realizing the crisis when they hit their masters or their PhDs. So you can probably feel the pain in my voice because I am at the PhD level. So I've been beaten and bruised and fell off the ladder. But again, so I can see here the voices from the publisher, from the Arab doesn't read, but the Arab hasn't got a credit card or a PayPal to actually pay for the book, and they have to speak to their friend who brings sweets and chocolate and bananas with them to grab the book from the book fair. So if you look in Facebook, for example, there's so many forums of how can I get the book. And some people now are exchanging goods. I'll give you my scarf, which I bought from Louis Vuitton, and you give me the book, and so on. So we need, I mean, it's nice to be here with jobs full times and being praised with nice titles, but it's nice sometimes to just take, a little look at how can these things be made better, how communication about book fairs, how people can, I don't know, add universities that are in the Arab world to the mailing list, not waiting for the Arab universities to tell you, can you add me in your mailing list? So just a food for thought here, not a criticism at all. So I hope you don't mind me. It's not a question.
Can I have
to defend the Arabic? The Arab person doesn't read. So.
Can I have a quick response to this? Thank you very much, Karima, for I'm throwing the ball back to the Middle Eastern librarian anyway, to make this bridges between West and East. But to respond to your comment is a twofold answer anyway. The one is the dissemination of information about the knowledge or about the publications in the Arab world, and this falls under the libraries, the work of libraries, and you mentioned WorldCat and other the Arabic Union catalog now, Saudi Arabian initiative. They catalog everything in the Middle Eastern libraries. And the other one is the reach, how people can get this publication or these publications. And again, it's a matter of resources, a matter of budget, libraries. If you have libraries that can support your researchers and users, they can go and hunt these publications. If you're not lucky, you don't have libraries, then you will be struggling. And I agree with you, because I was living in the Middle East, and now I'm living in the UK, and we have the same problems. But I think, I'm building on what Yasmin was mentioning as well, that the international bibliographic utilities like worldcat.org, the Arab Union catalog, and your project as well, the For Fun Foundation. I think these kind of things that needs to be connected to each others. Secondly, just to look at the other side of the world, which is the Arab world. You're doing things for the West where it's easy to access most of the resources, or at least know about it. But as you rightly said, in the Middle East itself, some people in Algeria came here to this library, to Aga Khan Library, and they were claiming that they don't have these resources in Algeria, where these resources have been published in Morocco. So they're Algerian, they couldn't access things from Morocco, and they came to the Aga Khan Library to spend 2 weeks just to access Arabic resources published in Morocco. So it's a multi-dimensional problem or dilemma, to be honest.
Okay, thank you. Before thanking the speakers and the audience, I also think it's fair to say that this discussion has given a lot of food for thought. And I was thinking about the field work I did in Syria for a number of years ago, when I was visiting for the first time in my, what at that time was informants, but now becoming friends, room where they received guests. And you saw these books that Andre was talking about, the one that was golden, red, black, and with poor paper in the inside on the shelves. And then I understood that books, that's not the wrong word, but in that context, that books can also be decorations, or a declaration of the fact that I belong to a certain interpretation of Islam. And then the others, when you talk to them about me and my type of speaking, and I'm trying to explain what anthropological words means in a suburban area in Damascus to my friends, didn't go that well. And in their case, we had two different ideas on how to establish authority and knowledge, and I spoke in terms of references to what was then one person I like to read a lot about, Michel Foucault. And that didn't go that well, I can say. But when I learned how to quote the Sheikh instead, that was much more appreciated reference. And then I thought that what is happening here is, of course, also a different way of thinking about authority, the book or the spoken word. And I think that's we talk a lot about internet media, but in certain contexts, I think we forget the authority that is made by the spoken word. And I couldn't see for any time during a fairly long field work anyone actually reading a book, but they were taking considerable notes every Friday, which they learn by heart. And if you could also be part of that learning process, your own authority was increasing and you could participate in conversations. So I think that challenge should also be noted. I mean, the book has a decoration or something else, and then the challenge of the spoken word. So by having said that, or reiterated, I'm a student of Sufism, so I like a story. So we could end by that story. Anyhow, so let me now thank the speakers. Thank you, the audience. I also would like to thank everyone that has been part of the preparation of this seminar. Saima, Alex, Eugene, Leanne, and Kanika. And I also would like to invite you all for a reception. I don't know if it's outside here or on that end. So warmly welcome, and let us thank them. And if you don't bring anything from the folder, bring this one, because they have the rest of the seminars.
Thank you very much, guys. It was really kind of great.
Mohammed, I didn't want to disagree with you.
It was a very good presentation, but I came quite late. Today is,
you can buy it from.
no, the thing is that you are right. Future, I mean, I came late, so I don't know what was the discussion, but I agree with the professor that book is becoming more and more like a decoration now, and the future is.
No, you're in trouble. I'm like coming in the morning very early to tidy up my room.
Yeah, I know. I just didn't know where you were traveling.
Yeah, I'll come speaking.
I think the future is digital. The future is digital. Yes. Yes.
That's exactly where